What you are about to hear is the story of a soldier and a waitress reunited after World War II in a small-town diner. Their love, once full of hope, now faces the scars of war and the secrets that could tear them apart. The small-town diner hadn't changed much since the war began. The faded red booths, the checkered floor, and the smell of fresh coffee brewing were all the same. But for Lily, everything felt different. She had worked here for years, serving coffee and pie with a smile that hid the loneliness gnawing at her heart. She had waited for Tom, the soldier she had fallen in love with before the war, the man who had promised to come back to her. And now, after all the years of letters filled with hope and longing, the day had finally come. Tom was coming home. Lily wiped down the counter, her hands trembling slightly as she glanced at the door every few seconds. The diner bustled with locals, but her mind was far away, anticipating the moment she had dreamed of for so long. Her co-worker, Martha, caught her eye and smiled gently. "He'll be here soon, Lily. You've waited long enough." The bell above the diner door jingled, and in stepped Tom, his silhouette framed by the late afternoon sun. He was different now, his once boyish face hardened, his eyes darker, carrying the weight of a man who had seen too much. He wore his army jacket, but the confident smile that had always made Lily's heart race was absent. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world around them disappeared. Tom took a hesitant step forward, his eyes searching her face as if to make sure she was real. Lily felt her breath catch in her throat, tears welling in her eyes. She rushed around the counter and into his arms, burying her face against his chest. The smell of him, the leather, the faint scent of cigarettes was overwhelming. "You're home," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought this day would never come." Tom held her tightly, his hands shaking as he wrapped them around her. "I promised I'd come back, didn't I?" But his voice was heavy, and though the embrace felt warm, Lily could sense the distance in him, something dark lurking beneath the surface. They sat down at one of the booths, the same one where they used to spend hours talking before the war, when the future felt bright and certain. Tom's gaze shifted around the diner, a shadow flickering across his face as he looked at the familiar surroundings. Lily studied him, noticing the tension in his jaw, the way his hands fidgeted. She had expected the reunion to be joyous, filled with laughter and kisses, but something wasn't right. "Tom," she began, her voice soft but concerned, "are you okay?" He glanced at her, and for the briefest moment, his eyes softened. But then the shadow returned, and he looked away. "I'm fine, Lily. It's hard coming back. Everything's the same, but nothing feels the same." Lily's heart ached for him, for the man she had loved, and the stranger he had become. She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "We'll get through this," she whispered. "We'll figure it out together, just like we always promised." Tom nodded, but the doubt in his eyes remained. As the days passed, Lily and Tom tried to settle into a new routine, but it was far from the joyful reunion Lily had dreamed of. Every morning, Tom would sit in the same corner booth at the diner, staring out the window as he nursed his coffee, his mind elsewhere. His face, once open and full of light, now carried a heaviness that Lily couldn't seem to penetrate. He rarely spoke about the war, and when he did, his words were clipped, guarded, as if saying too much might break him. Lily's heart broke a little more with each passing day. She had waited so long for this moment, holding on to the memory of the boy she had loved before the war, the boy who had promised to come back and build a life with her. But the man who had returned was different. He was distant, quiet, and there was a darkness in his eyes that she didn't know how to reach. One evening, as they sat at her small kitchen table, the silence between them became unbearable. Lily set her fork down, her hands trembling as she looked across the table at Tom. "I need you to talk to me, Tom," she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. "I know things have changed, but we can't move forward if you won't let me in." Tom's jaw clenched, and for a moment, she thought he might get up and walk away. But then he sighed, running a hand through his hair, his eyes weary. "You don't understand, Lily," he muttered. "There are things I've seen, things I've done. I can't just forget them." Lily reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "I don't expect you to forget. I just want to help. We've always faced everything together." Tom pulled his hand away, his eyes flashing with anger. "This isn't something you can help with," he snapped. "You weren't there. You didn't see what I saw. You can't understand." Lily flinched at the harshness of his words, her heart sinking. She had expected the war to change him, but she hadn't realized how deeply the wounds ran. "I know I can't understand," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I want to. I want to help you, Tom. Please don't shut me out." For a long moment, Tom didn't respond. He stared at his hands, his expression torn. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw, filled with a pain she had never heard from him before. "I'm not the man you used to know, Lily. I did things over there. Things I'm not proud of. I'm not sure I deserve to be happy." Lily's heart ached at his words, but she refused to give up. "You deserve happiness, Tom. You deserve love. What happened over there doesn't change that." But Tom shook his head, his eyes hollow. "You don't know everything." Lily leaned forward, desperation in her voice. "Then tell me. Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Tom stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor as he turned away from her. "I can't," he muttered, his voice thick with emotion. "I can't do this right now." He walked out of the kitchen, leaving Lily sitting alone at the table, her heart shattered. That night, as Lily lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, memories of the man Tom used to be flooded her mind, the man who had held her hand and promised to come back, who had kissed her goodbye on the train platform with hope in his eyes. She missed him. She missed the boy who had loved her so easily, so openly. But now she wasn't sure if that boy still existed. She wanted to fight for him, to help him heal, but there was something he was keeping from her, something that stood between them like an invisible wall. And the more she tried to reach him, the further away he seemed. A few days later, as Lily wiped down the diner counter, Martha leaned over, her voice low and concerned. "You need to give him time, Lily," she said gently. "War changes people. He's been through hell, and it's not something you can fix overnight." "I know," Lily replied, her voice filled with frustration and sadness. "But I feel like I'm losing him, and I don't know how to bring him back." Martha gave her a sympathetic smile, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're strong, Lily. You've waited this long. Don't give up on him now." But Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was wrong. She had always known Tom was keeping something from her, but now, as the days grew darker and their conversations more strained, she feared whatever secret he was hiding could tear them apart for good. And then, one evening, the truth came crashing down. It was late, the diner empty except for Lily and Tom sitting in their usual booth. The day had been tense, the air between them thick with unspoken words. Lily had reached her breaking point. She couldn't take the silence, the distance, the secrets that lingered just out of reach. She knew there was something deeper haunting Tom, something he had been too afraid to share. She watched him as he stared into his coffee cup, his fingers trembling slightly as he gripped it. He hadn't been sleeping well. The dark circles under his eyes told her that much. Each night, he tossed and turned, lost in nightmares he refused to speak of. But tonight, Lily wasn't going to let him hide anymore. "Tom," she said quietly, breaking the silence. "I need to know. I need to know what's been eating away at you." He didn't look at her. His jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the cup as if it held the answer he couldn't find. "Please," she continued, her voice filled with quiet desperation. "Whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone. I love you. But I can't help if you keep shutting me out." For a long moment, Tom didn't speak. The sound of the diner clock ticking filled the heavy silence. Finally, he set his cup down, his hands shaking. "There are things I've done, Lily," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Things that'll make you hate me." Lily's heart clenched, but she reached across the table, her hand resting on his. "Nothing you tell me will make me hate you. I just need the truth." Tom pulled his hand away, running it through his hair in frustration. "You say that, but you don't understand. You don't know what it's like over there. I killed people, Lily. Men who were just following orders, just like I was. I watched friends die, good men, better than me." And his voice cracked, and for the first time, Lily saw tears welling in his eyes. "I killed a boy, Lily," he choked out, his voice breaking. He couldn't have been more than 16. It was him or me, and he stopped, unable to finish. His hands were shaking uncontrollably now, his body tense with the weight of his confession. Lily's heart shattered as the truth poured out. She could see the torment in his eyes, the guilt that had been tearing him apart since the day he returned. She slid out of her seat and sat beside him, wrapping her arms around him as he broke down, his body trembling in her embrace. "I'm so sorry," he whispered through his tears. "I'm not the man you think I am." Lily held him tighter, tears streaming down her own face. "You're the man I love," she whispered fiercely. "I don't care what happened over there. I don't care what you had to do to survive. None of that changes how I feel about you." Tom pulled away slightly, his eyes red and swollen, his face etched with pain. "How can you love someone like me? I don't even know if I deserve to live, let alone be happy." Lily kept his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You deserve love. You deserve happiness. You went through hell, and you did what you had to do to survive. But you don't have to go through this alone anymore. I'm here, Tom. I've always been here." For the first time in weeks, Tom really looked at her, and saw the love and forgiveness in her eyes. It was like a dam had broken inside him. He let out a deep, shuddering breath and buried his face in her shoulder, allowing himself to grieve, to finally release the guilt and pain he had carried for so long. The weeks that followed were filled with small steps toward healing. Tom still struggled, still had nightmares, but with each passing day, he opened up more to Lily, letting her in little by little. They spent long nights talking, sharing the pain and fear that had once kept them apart. The bond they had before the war slowly began to rebuild, not in the same way, but stronger, rooted in the raw honesty they now shared. One afternoon, as they sat outside on Lily's porch watching the sunset over the quiet town, Tom took her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "I never thought I could feel this again," he admitted softly. "I thought I was too far gone. Lee leaned her head against his shoulder, her heart full. "You're not. We're not." He smiled, a small but genuine smile, the first one she had seen in a long time. "I don't deserve you, Lily." She smiled back, her eyes soft. "You deserve everything, Tom." And so, their journey toward healing continued. The scars of the war would never fully fade, and the road ahead would be difficult, but they had each other. And in the end, it was their love, the kind that could withstand even the darkest of storms, that gave them the strength to face the future together.